So I've been reading a book called The Confidence Code. And in The Confidence Code, the authors speak specifically about how usually in society women have less confidence than men, and also when you are in a minority group there also tends to be the fact that you show less of what's accepted as, confidence, right? And I was thinking about this, and what really triggered this video was an email I got from an individual I'm only going to identify as B, who had reached out to me and said, I've been going for interviews, but I always feel like I don't have confidence in these interviews, and I feel like that's standing in my way from getting the jobs that I want. So I wanted to do this video to share some tips that I think are going to be extremely helpful if confidence is something that you struggle with. Now, there are several sociological, psychological, scientific reasons why somebody may struggle with confidence, and I am not in any way putting those down or eliminating that. I actually want to acknowledge that in this video, that there's so many reasons, right? I mentioned women, I mentioned minority groups. Already you know that there are social reasons why this may happen, right? But I do really strongly believe, all right, that you can do things to help you look more confident. This doesn't mean that you fake it. It doesn't mean you have to pretend to be an extrovert. It's just that I found that these things, if you do them consistently or frequently, they're going to help you exude more confidence, okay? The first one that I have found extremely helpful is always to remember that whoever you are speaking to, whether this is in an interview, whether this is in work, this is in life, the other person is just a human being. Yes, I understand that maybe you're talking to an employer, so that's intimidating. Maybe you're talking to somebody that is well known in your industry. Maybe you're speaking to somebody that's considered really important. And so it can feel intimidating that, oh, me, I'm talking to this person. What can I say? But one of the things that has been completely helpful to me has been always to remember that the other person is just a human being. They have challenges just like you. They have fears just like you. They have wins. They have days when they're happy. They have days when they're sad. They have all those range of emotions that you have. And when you see that person as not somebody who is on this high up pedestal, now I'm not saying to just forget that people have positions and whatnot, but when you recognize that this is just a person and I'm having a conversation with a person, that this is helpful. This helps you see the person as, okay, we can have a conversation and I don't necessarily have to feel nervous about this conversation we're going to have. So one of the things that has completely helped me is just, it's another human being. Do they have, they have kids, they have a life, they have hobbies. It's just another human being. Another thing that I have found helpful, and actually when I was doing research for this video, I found as one of the ways that you can begin to exude confidence was to work on dressing better. Now, I know that sounds maybe a little superficial, but I have found this to be true in my own life. Okay, so hear me out. I found this true to be in my own life. I wasn't really one to care about how I looked outwardly when I was in my teens and in my early 20s. Like, I remember even my husband commented on that when he first met me. He's like, he really liked me. He was like, you don't really care about how you look on the outside, do you? And I'm like, whatever, But then I think somewhere when I hit 30, I don't know what happened. I don't know what caused the switch. But I was like, I want to look better. I want to dress better. I want to look feminine. I just want to look good, right? And so I began to think of ways to begin to look better. Now, looking better doesn't necessarily mean expensive clothes or expensive makeup or, done up hair all the time. But as I began to, for instance, choose clothes that fit the body type that I have better, or, wear colors that would make my skin pop, or wear something that, I usually wouldn't wear, but it would look so good when I wore it. As I began to do that, I found that there was internal on the outside, right? I was beginning to look good, but internally I was beginning to accept that, wait, I'm beautiful, I'm attractive, like, so when you begin to do that, when you begin to dress better, just generally, not even because you're doing it for anybody else, but just for you, I find that this is a great confidence booster. And when you begin to talk to people, people feel it. And I did notice a shift in how people reacted to me when they would, I'd be more confident. I was just more confident. So it wasn't just them reacting to the fact that I was dressing better, although there are studies to show that. But I feel like when I started doing that, there was something that also switched internally inside of me, boosted that confidence, made me more bold. And because of that, I began to see people respond a little more differently around me. And it opened a lot of doors. It brought a lot of opportunities my way. Another thing to do to exude more confidence is, of course, if you're going to be in a presentation, if you're going to an interview, prepare before you go. The way that I've done this in the past is sometimes to go back to that job description. Now, this can be funny because sometimes they don't always leave the job description up when they're interviewing, but perhaps if you can, go find that job description again and read through it, right? And as you read through it, think of how you may answer the question. If it's a presentation, then maybe you make the presentation ahead of time. You make sure you go through the slides. I remember when I was in graduate school, there were times, especially in the early part of grad school, when I had my yearly meetings with my advisors or when I had to give presentations, I would actually practice the presentation on my own multiple times before I went. Now, of course, over time, I built the confidence so that I didn't have to go through it as many times before I had the actual presentation. But I always found that if my slides were done, if I was able to run through them at least in my head one or two times before I went for the presentation, then I was more confident in giving it. If I read ahead of time and, maybe read some key papers that I needed to read before I went to do the presentation, then I exuded more confidence. So also be in that place where you're in a constant state of preparation, right? And so for an interview or for a presentation, that would be what I just described. But just for life, right, I would say read more, right? Expose yourself to more books, expose yourself to more audiobooks. I use a tool, an app called Scribed on my phone, and it allows me to listen to audiobooks when I'm on my way to work and when I'm coming back. I have conversations with my husband about some of those ideas, and I express some of those ideas on social media. Actually, social media has been a really good way for me to build my confidence, because I can sit here and talk to this camera and I can put it online, and it doesn't matter how I look, it doesn't matter how I sound, there are going to be thousands of people that watch those videos. Now, what I'm doing when I do this is thousands of people are going to watch those videos. And so I know that a few thousand people probably judge the way I look or the way I speak or something, right? But I'm putting that out there in spite of it. And so because of that, that has also helped me build confidence. So one of the things you can do is always to just be in a constant state of practice where you're constantly learning and exposing yourself to new things. You're discussing those things, maybe just on a personal level with people. It just increases your level of what you know, right? Not just to have useless trivia, but also so that you can speak with a lot of confidence and like you actually know what you're talking about. Another way to exude confidence is to ask questions. All right. Now you may think, what? Ask questions? Yes, ask questions. When you are in a meeting, when you are in wherever you are, right? Don't think that whoever is all in the table or in that room, they're the only ones that have all the knowledge. Actually, sometimes you'll find that when you ask a question after the meeting, somebody will say, oh, thank you so much for asking that question. I didn't want to seem like I was stupid or something like that asking that question. So what I'm trying to say is that most of the time in meetings, there are people that also don't understand the things that you don't understand. So when you take that initiative and raise your hand and say, hey, I'm looking at what you're saying and I don't get this or that. Could you explain that more to me? Number one, that gives you the opportunity to speak up in a meeting. And here's the thing, I have learned that, especially unless it's a toxic work environment, there are toxic work environments where they shut people down for asking questions or for speaking up. And that's not what I'm talking about. When you're in a healthy, ideal, healthy work environment, right? It's good to speak up. It's good to ask questions, and actually this can be a really good way for you to get noticed for other opportunities, right? So ask a question. It doesn't have to be a complicated question. Maybe you'd say, hey, could you go back one slide, or something that I couldn't get? Just saying that out loud, just asking that question, that clarifying question, and having the person explain that back to you can really be a confidence booster. Depending on the culture you grew up in, you were probably told that a sign of respect was for you to look down when you're speaking to people, or to look away from people's eyes when you're speaking to them. I know that I grew up in such a culture, but I've learned, okay, that generally I think what's becoming more acceptable, it's been acceptable especially in Western cultures for a really long time, but I think what is happening now is, for me personally, if I'm speaking to you and you look down or you look away from my face, I get the sense that you're not listening. I get the sense that you're not interested in what I have to say. And I may just stop speaking and just kind of walk away, right? But then some people may not know that, and so when that happens, you're like, oh, I've been rejected, right? I was trying to be respectful but not meet their gaze, and now that person walked away. But what I want you to learn or practice doing is, when people are talking to you, when you are talking to somebody, don't avert your gaze, don't look down. Look at that person's face. If you can, look into their eyes. That's something that I had to learn how to do. Look into their eyes, look into their face, show that you're listening. And then this, of course, when you are speaking, do the same thing. It's very hard when you are looking at somebody's face, when you're looking in their eye, to assume that they are not confident, right? And so I found that that's super helpful. So whenever I'm speaking to people, I'm looking in their face, I'm, tilting my head to show that I'm listening. So there are a few things here, right? You're looking at the person's face, but also your body language, right? If people see you kind of sitting like, oh, like that, or all slumped back, it can definitely feel like you are uninterested. But when you are engaged, right, your upper body is engaged, it's sitting up straight, it's looking in people's faces, it shows somebody that's confident, it shows somebody that's paying attention, it shows that they're interested in me and I'm interested in them, and I want to hear what they have to say, because even their body language is exuding confidence. And I don't think this is a scientific rule, but I have found that confidence breeds confidence. Once you start doing some of these things that I've shared in this video, you begin to see that, of course, people begin to pay more attention, but you also like, oh wow, like people are paying more attention to me. So it helps you do that behavior more, because as human beings, we tend to do more of the behavior that's rewarded. So I hope that this video was helpful. If it was, let me know in the comments below, and let me know in the comments as well, what other pieces of advice would you give to somebody who wants to exude confidence? All right, let me know.